I'm going to kick it off here with the AFC South. At number 4, I have the Tennessee Titans. I have them at 4-13. You probably have them. I'm guessing if they're your last place team, I'm guessing you probably have them a little bit less wins than that. The Titans to me are very interesting because they bring in a new head coach in Callahan, the former Bengals offensive coordinator. They replace Derrick Henry with Tony Power. They add Calvin Ridley. They pretty much paid a bag to say, don't go to New England, come here to Tennessee instead. They bring over Tyler Boyd from Cincinnati. They add DeAndre Hopkins still. Their weapons are loaded. Just if you tell me who's a player for them on the defense side of the ball, Jeffrey Simmons may still be there. Besides that, I don't know. I generally do not know a Tennessee Titan defender, and I don't think Will Levis is the guy. Did not think he was the guy last year. Do not think he's the guy this year. In my opinion, the Titans may be what the Commanders were a year ago, which was we got these weapons. Let's see if Sam Howell could play. Clearly, he could not. They moved off him and dropped Jaden Daniels and had the second worst record in the NFL. I think Tennessee could be in that same boat. Now, I will say this. This division is no longer a pushover. And these next two teams, I have them basically identical at 9-8. The second place team wins because of a conference tiebreaker. I think I'm just going to go back to back here because they're really the same team. Indianapolis and Jacksonville. I have them both at 9-8. It was very hard for me to not put either one of these two teams in the playoffs. When it comes to Indianapolis, I think Anthony Richardson not playing at all last year could actually be a benefit. There's not a lot of tape on him. He did not finish a game last year. And I just think Shane Steichen's a wizard, and he's going to get the best out of that kid as long as he stays healthy. You still got Michael Pittman there. Still got Jonathan Taylor there. You still got DeForest Buckner there. Kenny Moore is still there. Their offensive line is still led by Quentin Nelson. A lot of that foundation is in place. And then I think people forget that the Jacksonville Jaguars started off 8-3 last year until Trevor Lawrence played, but he was hurt, and they just sort of fell off a cliff. And I do think there was pressure on Lawrence for whatever reason to get the ball to Ridley. I think the fact that you have Christian Kirk, your Zay Joneses, they bring in Gabe Davis from Buffalo, Evan Ingram is still there to go with Travis Etienne, Josh Hines Allen as their best pass rusher, Doug Peterson, Super Bowl winning head coach. I am not writing the Jaguars off. I would not be surprised if they are a playoff team. I think the AFC is still stacked. And then that leads me to the team that you tried to convince me all last year was better than Jacksonville, and it took you to the last game of the season to do so, but you were right. At 11-6 and being the number 2 seed in the AFC, I have the Houston Texans, who, yes, they did add Joe Mixon from the Bengals. Big upgrade. They added Stephon Diggs from Buffalo. Big upgrade. I think those are two tremendous upgrades. CJ Stroud, I think, is going to have a very good year. If he duplicates that season he had a year ago, he may be in the MVP conversation this year. My concern with Houston and why I'm not giving them 12 or 13 wins, they do have a first-place schedule. It's a very difficult schedule. And Jacksonville and Indy, I think, are going to be better than what they were a year ago, which is why I think there is a world where they could win, maybe 10 games, but I'll spot them in at 11. And again, the number 2 seed in the AFC.
All right. So, yes, I have the Tennessee Titans as the worst team in the AFC at 3-14.
Okay.
So, because, yes, they got some nice weapons, but they just traded Malik Willis. And like you said, I don't know anybody on their defense unless Jeffrey Simmons is still there. And they traded Malik Willis. So what happens if Will Levis is not the guy? Who do they go to? I don't know.
2025.
Yeah. So I agree with you there. Third place is where we disagree right away. because although I have them finishing with the same record that you gave them, and their quarterback just got a big extension this offseason, I trust the two teams ahead of them more. That's why I have the Jacksonville Jaguars finishing at 9-8, just missing the playoffs. I like their weapons. Like you said, they have Christian Kirk, they have Zay Jones, they got Gabe Davis, they got Travis Etienne, Evan Ingram. But they're outside of Josh Hines Allen, their defense is just just looks a little shaky to me, and I think that could be their Achilles heel. At number 2, I was pushing for this team to jump up in the draft and take Rome Odunze. They did not, but they've got Shane Steichen as their head coach. They've got Anthony Richardson. They've got Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr. They've got DeForest Buckner, like you said. They went and got I think it's Adonai Mitchell out of Texas, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. So that's another weapon. So finishing at 10-7, getting into the playoffs as a wild card team, the Indianapolis Colts. And then with the number 1 seed in the AFC will run through Cape Canaveral. No, not Cape Canaveral. I'm sorry. Mission Control. There we go. The Space City. I think Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon, that just adds to their running back room. You got DeMeco Ryans, another year under his belt. I like CJ Stroud. You know how high I was on him last year. Yes, they have a first-place schedule, but I think the Houston Texans are going to prove that last year was not a fluke for them.
So I will say this. I don't hate anything you said. I was torn between Jacksonville and Indy. I think you're a little more down on Jacksonville than I am, even though we have them as the same record. I think Jacksonville and Indy are very similarly built. They have similar head coaches. If Houston wasn't in the division as good as they are, I would like both these teams, maybe even playoff teams.
Yeah.
Like this AFC South is not a pushover division anymore.
By the way, I didn't mention, I only have Houston finishing one game ahead of Kansas City in terms of the number 1 seed.
So you have them at 13-4.
Yes.
I think this is my take on Houston. You could be right. Again, I think their schedule's a little bit harder than it was last year, and I think their division's better. I also think this, though, and you may disagree, if the Texans are going to make a deep run in the AFC, it may be this year and this year only. And the only reason I say that is because I think at the end of this year, Bobby Slowick is going to be a head coach in the National Football League for some team. And we've seen it. We've seen Jalen Hurts have the drop-off without Shane Steichen until he got the right OC. We've seen Justin Herbert struggle to not make the playoffs. We think he will this year now that he's got the right head coach, we think. If Houston loses Bobby Slowick and they don't have the right play caller, is there a chance where Houston's not as good next year as they are this year? I believe there is, which is why I'm saying they have to strike now, which is why they went out and they got Mixon and Diggs.
Yes. And I believe it's only a 1-year contract for Stephon Diggs.
It is.
So if it doesn't work out, okay, it was a 1-year deal. Like, it's not that big of a loss for them, I don't think. But I totally agree. If Houston's going to strike, it has to be this season. Because, yes, Kansas City still was able to win the Super Bowl last year, even though, like, everybody was down on them and they had all their receiver issues. But I still think there's an opportunity for Houston to jump ahead of them. I can't wait for that matchup when they play each other. I think it's late in
That's the week before Christmas.
Yes, and it's in Kansas City. Ugh. Don't love that for Houston, but still.
Okay, since the next division is your division, I'm gonna let you decide. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go?
So in fourth place, I guess I'm going. Yes, they will still have a winning record because Mike Tomlin doesn't know how to not have a losing, how to have a losing season. He doesn't even have that word in his dictionary. But they're gonna go exactly 500. Or no, you can't do that with a 17 game schedule. I'm sorry. Um, so they'll go 9-8, just miss the playoffs. But it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know who their quarterback's going to be right now. I don't think they've officially announced whether it's going to be Russell Wilson or Justin
They
Fields.
may not till they go out on the field week 1 of the Arthur Smith revenge game.
um, and that's part of the reason why I have the Steelers finishing last, is because I don't trust Arthur Smith even as offensive coordinator. Like, is he just going to come up with all these crazy gadget plays and use players we've never heard of, like on the Steelers offense? It's going to be like, oh, there's number 72 running a jet sweep. And you're like, who the heck is number 72? I've never seen him. Um, so I again, Mike Tomlin just doesn't know how to have a losing season. You still have TJ Watt on the defensive side of the ball. We know how great he is. You still have Minka Fitzpatrick. You you have Warren offensively at running back. You have George Pickens, and you have Pat Fryermuth. Maybe they're gonna have Brandon Ayuk. I have no idea what's going on with that whole thing. It seems like that whole thing has been going on for months on end. I just don't care anymore. But I'm just like, okay, you have Fryermuth, you have Warren, and George Pickens. Do you have anything else, Steelers? I'm not sure. So in third place, it's the eye of the tiger, Joe Burrow and those Cincinnati Bengals. I think this Jamar Chase situation is going to hang over their heads throughout the season, and it could be a bit of a distraction for them. I have them winning 10 games, so 10-7. Um, but I know it's crazy, but I trust Deshaun Watson a little bit and Lamar Jackson for obvious reasons, a little bit more than Joe Burrow. I don't know how he's going to be coming off of a major injury like he had last season with his wrist. They have to play Kansas City early. You got to play Baltimore. You got Dallas, Philadelphia. The Chargers are on the schedule. That's a tough list of opponents for Cincinnati. So, and we know how they struggle against the Browns. So, that's what I think is going to put them in third place. And in second, my hometown team, I've got the Browns. They're going to be if I have this right, they're going to be the 6th seed in the AFC. I think Deshaun Watson, I don't like that he didn't play at all in preseason. I hate that as a Browns fan because the dude had Browns fans and NFL fans and media members are all like, can Deshaun Watson get back to the Houston version of himself? And I'm like, what evidence has he shown that he can get back to that version? And people always point to the second half of the Baltimore game. I'm like, okay, do you have any other examples? And they say the Arizona game or the Tennessee game. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, but Arizona and Tennessee, not much of anything. So I like what we have offensively, although Nick Chubb's going to be unavailable for the first 4 games. Not great, but I still like our offensive weapons: Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, David Njoku. I don't think our defense is going to take much of a hit with some of our losses. I am going to miss Sione Takitaki, but we still have Myles Garrett. You still have Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, so the pieces are in place. But when you've got Lamar Jackson at the top of the division, I can't see the Browns winning the division. And then in first place, they're good. I think they repeat as the AFC North division winners. They'll be the number 3 seed in the AFC. It's Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. I think the Ravens adding Derrick Henry, that's going to be a huge pickup for them because now teams can't stack the box against the Ravens. Like, okay, you want to take away Lamar Jackson? Here you go, King Henry. I do think the loss of Patrick Queen going to the Steelers is going to be a huge hole for them. So I'll be curious to see how they fill that. But I've got Baltimore winning the division.
Josh, this is not a surprise because this is probably the hardest division in the AFC to predict. But we disagree on the placement of all 4 teams.
Not surprising. Okay, go.
So, in 4th place, with a record of 8-9, I hate to do it, our hometown Cleveland Browns. Okay. I don't trust the Kevin Stefanski, Deshaun Watson relationship.
That's fair. Let me just say this. I totally understand your thought process on that because, like I said, we haven't seen enough evidence of Deshaun Watson on the field. So I totally understand that. Continue.
Everything with Watson and Stefanski, and as I have said, even dating back to last year with the handling of the injury, he's going to play, he's not going to play. He goes out there, he gets concussed, goes out against Baltimore, can't hit the side of a barn in the first half, second half plays perfect, and then has a shoulder injury. It's just weird to me. Even the preseason, like against Seattle, he's going to play, then he's not going to play. It's strange to me. I don't understand it. Weapons-wise, I really like David Njoku. I like Amari Cooper. I think Jerry Jeudy's going to have a very good year. I am very concerned, and I don't think a lot of people in Cleveland are discussing this enough about the Browns' offensive line situation. I think the left and right tackle both, because it sounds like Jack Conklin's coming off PUB, but he's had no reps in preseason at all. He isn't at training camp. The right tackle situation, I mean, they could barely stand up against Seattle in the preseason. So I think that's an issue. And defensively, they had a historic year at home last year. We talked about it. They gave up 10 points a game. They gave up 30 points a game on the road. I don't think it's going to be that bad of a split. But when I look at this Browns schedule this year, to me, it is the absolute toughest schedule in the National Football League. And I even look at the home games. Dallas, the Giants, the Chargers, Kansas City, Miami, and the entire division. Though to me, the only way I see it, the Giants and Miami, just because Miami coming to Cleveland on New Year's Eve, are the only locks on that home schedule. I'm not saying they're going to go 2-7 at home. I'm just saying I think it's going to be very difficult for the Browns. I think it's going to be a very difficult season.
I could see it. I mean, you look at the road schedule too. Jacksonville. I mean,
week 2, by the way, in that Florida heat, that's a very difficult game early in the season.
I agree, especially coming off of what could be a very physical game against Dallas. At Washington, that could be a tough game depending on what the Commanders look like. Philadelphia, it's never easy to go into Philly and win. We know that. Playing at New Orleans, it's always
at Denver and at Vegas are always tough locations for the Browns as well. So
yeah, and then of course you have the entire AFC North, and you finish the season at Baltimore. Ugh.
So number 3, I agree with you. Even though they should not go over 500, they're going to find a way to because they're the freaking Pittsburgh Steelers. They're going to finish 9-8 and 3rd in the AFC North. Now, I agree with everything you said about Pittsburgh. The only thing I want to do with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I want to run down their schedule essentially in reverse. I'm going to give you, starting in week 11, because they have a very hard last 8 games. 6 out of their last 8 games are all in the division. Them and the Bears on the schedule very similar to that. They have to play the Ravens at home. Then they go to Cleveland on a short week, the Thursday before Thanksgiving. Then they go to Cincinnati. Then they play the Browns again. Then they got to go to Philly. Then they got to go at Baltimore on a Saturday. They got to play Kansas City on Christmas. And then finish up with the Cincinnati Bengals. That, to me, is at best you're looking at a 3-5 schedule. And that is a split with your division and then losing to Philly and Kansas City.
Yeah.
Then their first 8 games on the docket then. At Atlanta, at Denver, home against the Chargers, at Indy, home against Dallas, at Vegas, home against the Jets, home against the Giants, and at Washington. In my opinion, the only game out of those first 9 that are guaranteed win is against the Giants in week 8. So
you're not even, wait a minute. So you're not even giving them a guaranteed win against Washington?
No, I'm not.
Interesting.
So I look at that and I say 9-8, yes, but they better start 6-3. And
yeah.
I will also say this. I don't care, and I told you this when we first broke the news. I don't care that Mike Tomlin signed a contract extension. If things go south this year in Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin will be in the broadcast booth for one of the NFL networks next season.
Oh, wow.
I think the Steelers, a lot like New England, need a culture reset. Get an offensive guy in there, get a new quarterback. They've been spinning their wheels for the last 5 seasons, it feels like, a quarterback. Do you know the last playoff game they won was that game at Kansas City when they kicked 6 field goals to beat Alex Smith?
Yeah, that was and that was a game.
Yeah, exactly. So there's the Pittsburgh Steelers. I have them at 9-8, just missing the playoffs. I have this next team as a wild card team. I have them at 11-6, but I do not have them winning the division. The Baltimore Ravens.
All right.
I just think there is a little bit of a regression coming here. I don't think they're going to be as dominant as they were a year ago. I think the loss of Mike McDonald, now the new head coach in Seattle, is a huge loss for Baltimore because I think he ran that defense last year. And they go to Zach Orr, who was on the staff last year, but he's the second youngest coordinator in the National Football League. Will he get the same out of that defense? Also, we talked about Joe Burrow, how he was hurt all of last year. Well, Lamar Jackson, uncharacteristically to this point in his career, stayed healthy last year. Is that going to happen again for all 17 games? I don't know. And I like the addition of Derrick Henry, but I don't think he's going to have as big of an impact as people think. I think that Derrick Henry lost a step last year. I don't think he's the same back. I don't think he has the same explosiveness. I think he'll be good in Baltimore. I don't think he'll be great. And I actually think an underrated loss for them was Odell Beckham Jr., who's now in Miami. He was really good for them last year. Will Zay Flowers and Duvernay and Isaiah Likely, along with Mark Andrews, step up to fill that role in the passing game? Again, I think they'll be good. I think they'll regress to what they were 2 years ago and not last year.
I can understand why you would say that. Totally. I think the combination of Mike McDonald and Patrick Queen not being there could be what hurts them majorly defensively.
Which brings me to the team who I believe will have the number 1 seed in the AFC this year.
Whoa!
The Cincinnati Bengals at 12-5.
Okay.
You give me, and again, this is based off health, because Joe Burrow has not been healthy the last 2 seasons. But in my opinion, Joe Burrow is the second best quarterback in the league, not just the conference, behind Patrick Mahomes. A healthy Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase, with T. Higgins, who is back, with Jermaine Burton out of Alabama, who will be a better Tyler Boyd. and Lou Adamoro, who will always get the best out of that defense like he has done the past few years, even though they don't have the best names on them. I'm sorry, you give me Joe Burrow in a football game, I'm taking the Cincinnati Bengals. This is Burrow's first healthy offseason he's had in the past two training camps. Now, I know he's going off the injury, but he participated fully in camp. Remember 2 years ago, he had the appendix issue. Then last year, he had the calf issue. This year, he got a full training camp. Not only that, but when Joe Burrow has stayed healthy the entire season, Josh, 2 seasons he has stayed healthy. The earliest the Cincinnati Bengals have been eliminated is the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally understand why you would give the Bengals not only the division title but also the top spot in the AFC. It totally makes sense to me. Again, it's just I have question marks about if Joe Burrow can stay healthy because, again, you talked about in the 2 seasons he did stay healthy. They went to the AFC Championship game, and they arguably should have won the Super Bowl against the Rams. Arguably.
They got hosed on a bad illegal contact call, which I thought was complete and utter bullshit.
Yes. But nonetheless, and we've talked about in the regular season, I believe Joe Burrow is what, 3-1 against Patrick Mahomes?
I think he's 3-0.
In the regular season, you're right. He's 3-0, and in the postseason, he only has one loss against Mahomes.
Yes, he's 1-1.